Hello, everyone. April Cox here. Have you ever wondered, what am I doing wrong? How do I get this social media going? How do I increase my followers? Where do I even find them? How are people going to find me? Today, we're going to answer those questions with our special guest speaker, Abigail Hardin. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. I found Abigail on web talking about this stuff, and she has come and talked with us previously, and this is the most requested topic, I think, of all of the ones I've presented on. So just join me in welcoming Abigail Ian. Welcome, Abigail. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Yes, you're so welcome. This is a topic that's talked about a lot. I get a lot of questions. My most frequently asked thing. Everyone always wants to know social media, I think, because things change a lot. So I'm going to get in. Let me pull up my screen share. I've got a little presentation. I'm just going to read through just so you guys can hear a little bit about me, and then we'll get into some super good stuff. So I wanted you guys to know, social media can be overwhelming. Even me, that I do it for a living, and I still get overwhelmed. So if you're overwhelmed, it's totally okay. I understand your frustration. I work with a lot of business owners. I build websites, I do logos and branding and work on social media. And they all kind of come together. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So a little bit about my background. I worked as an administrative assistant for 3 years. Then in 2019, I started my own business. And before I was an assistant, I worked in a call center solving problems for people on their iPhones and their tablets and their computers. And so I've kind of been solving digital problems for almost 10 years, which is weird to think about. And I love it, but I know solving problems in all of these realms are not always, everyone's favorite thing to do. And so that's why I started my business, because I knew I could help people in that way. So the goal for the training is really to help you guys understand how to speak directly to your customer through your social media content. And I'm hoping that after this training, we feel a little bit less overwhelmed and a little more empowered to kind of really tackle this head on. So let's dive in. One of the big questions is people ask, how do you grow your social media following with the right people? And a big piece of this is narrowing down your target audience. I have a blog post on how to find your target audience. So we're not actually going to dive in that, because that could be its own training in itself. So here's that. You really want to know who your target audience is. Like, who is your buyer? Is it like moms? Is it kids? Is it like, who is it that you're actually creating content for that's going to actually purchase the book that you guys are offering? And if the book isn't there yet, let's talk about, how you can generate some curiosity and do little sneak peeks and start to build that audience while you're working on the book. So the biggest thing I would say in growing your social media following with the right people is exactly that. Like, think about who is going to want the book you're putting out there, who is going to get value from what you know. Everyone knows something different. And whether that be you're sharing different tips and tricks about or sneak peeks about the book, sparking curiosity is a really big piece of that. If you're posting about the book, it doesn't have to be like a, 1-to-5 ratio. Most of the time people do a 1-to-5 or 1-to-4 ratio for, really promotional stuff. Now, if you're saying like the book is on sale, or come buy the book, or click on this link to see this blog post, like if you're asking them to do anything, that would be like a once a week if you're posting like 5 times a week. But as far as like posting about the book, you could do anything about the book that's more geared towards curiosity and maybe showing them things like little sneak peeks about the book. But if it's like heavily promotional, where you're sharing like a sale or you're asking them to buy, you want to keep that to a minimum. And the other posts really need to be, whether you're adding tips or you're talking about your life, like maybe you're sharing something, like maybe it's a picture of, I have a friend who shared a picture of, her sitting there with her grandkids reading the book, and maybe she says like, Saturday relaxing time with, reading books together. But the picture is her holding her actual book with her grandkids. Like, that wouldn't be promotional. That's more lifestyle geared, but also makes them think of the book because it's in the picture. The next thing I want to get into, and the reason I talk about sparking curiosity, is this blew my mind. I actually learned this in the last year or so, is the buying phases that people go through. So generally you go from curious right? You like see a product, you're like, okay, I'm curious, right? And then you go, oh, wow, I could see how this would be beneficial. Then you move into the commitment phase. Like we've all been at the mall, right? And you walk by and like someone's like, hey, let me give you a massage, or hey, do you want to try this? Hey. And it's kind of like, okay, can you just step back a second? You didn't even show that you were interested and they're like out trying to sell to you. And that is like obviously so annoying, right? And we don't want to do that. Like it's important to have some promotional stuff online, but the majority of it, you want to meet them in that phase 1 and 2. Phase 3, that commitment, when they're ready to purchase, they're going to click the link in your bio, like on Instagram, or they're going to find the website and they're going to purchase. The website's job is to make that sale and also show other aspects that you offer, whether you also offer services. But your social media really needs to focus on that phase 1 and phase 2 of the buying process. That also helps make content less overwhelming. So when you're creating content, it doesn't have to be this really salesy focused. It can be more personal. If you want to share lifestyle or what you had for breakfast, or maybe you have your breakfast there and you have some notes of some ideas for a future book that you're releasing, like that's interesting to people. And it doesn't feel like you're saying, hey, please buy this thing, or here, please do this. It doesn't seem too pushy. Sharing reviews is a great way to really push them through curiosity into enlightenment, because then they're seeing firsthand what other people are experiencing, like by reading your book or sharing it with kids. That's a great point for sure. This next one is a big one. I have a blog post for this one for you guys too. I wanted to make sure I gave you guys a lot of resources that help you learn post this training. So this one's all about how do you find the right hashtags for visibility. So I wrote on here, before you start picking hashtags, important to understand who's looking for the type of content you're sharing. What are they searching for to find it? Who is looking for this type of content? Is there a location you want to target? Like, let's say you're doing a book signing in Nashville, Tennessee, right? Obviously, you could use Nashville TN as a hashtag, but also figure out like surrounding cities and use those cities like hashtags in the post. So it's really about specifically the content itself. You want to think about who you're looking for to see that and who's looking for that kind of a post when you're developing your hashtags. When you're actually searching for hashtags, you're literally going to open up Instagram and you're going to click that search button. And then you're going to type in, like, let's say, for instance, I'm just going to type Nashville TN and I'm going to hit search. Now, you want to click the tags tab at the top, and then it's going to show you a list. Like right now it says, 2 million posts for Nashville TN. I may not use that one because anything over 1 million you may not get a lot of views. I might put that in there just so that I'm tagging the location, but I'm not really expecting a lot of people to find me just from that hashtag alone because so many people are using it all the time. Another good thing to know about a hashtag is like right below Nashville TN, it says Nashville, Tennessee photographer, or TN. It doesn't actually have the word spelled out. That says 17.3 thousand posts. So if you're a photographer, that would be a great post. When you're actually going through and researching hashtags, do this first, because if you're just throwing hashtags on your post before you post it, you don't actually know if that has like millions, or if it has two. If it has two, no one's looking up that hashtag. I generally will say use 5 that's for your location, 5 that relates to the audience, 5 that relates to the brand, and then maybe 5 big ones and 5 niche ones, meaning, around less than 500,000, probably more than 100,000. You want to think audience specific. So like for my posts, I'll use hashtag mompreneur. It's a pretty big hashtag. And I'm not a mom. I have a dog. I don't call myself a dog mom because I think that's kind of a downgrade to all the moms who actually have kids, which is very different than having a dog. But that's a good hashtag. And I use that in my posts, not because I'm identifying myself, but because I want to connect with other moms who are business owners. So you kind of have to think about it in reverse. Like think about the hashtags that the type of people you're wanting to connect with is using. That way you're actually connecting with those people. Say brand, location, audience specific, and then 5 niche and 5 like popular ones, like that Nashville, Tennessee would be considered more of a popular hashtag. Generally, you can put up to 30 hashtags in a post. Another good rule of thumb is to not reuse that same set of 30 every time, because if you do, Instagram will flag you and will either shut down your account or it will set it up to where it won't show your post to anyone because it thinks that you're spamming them. So generally you want to come up with, I wouldn't say a new set of 30 every time, but let's say the audience stays the same, the industry style. Like I always use web designer, logo designer in my posts, but like have another new set of 5, right? So like obviously it needs to relate to the photo or the content. So if I'm doing, a painting video, I'm going to type, watercolor painting or watercolor mountain. Those are going to change because not every post is going to have that. So it's a good idea to stick with the same industry specific and your audience specific, but swap out the other ones so it actually relates to the photo or the video that you're actually posting. For me, my brand's name is Create and Collab. So I always use hashtag Create and Collab in all my business posts because I want, if someone actually searches for the business, they'll find it by using the brand specific. And then other brand specific would be, web designer, logo design. You guys could look up different author hashtags. I type in just the word author, and then I look at the tags. There's a bunch. There's one that says author life, author quotes, author community, author's life. So you could actually put in some hashtags about that, whether it's, you could do children's book author, children's book illustration, just like if it's a photo of like a close-up of the book. So brand specific are really specific to what you're actually doing, the services that you're offering, and the product that you have. So this is a big one. Everyone's like, what should I post, right? And so developing a content strategy is really important before you start creating content. And the content strategy isn't as much about, post 3 days a week or post 5 days a week. The content strategy has to do with like your business goals. How many books do you want to sell? How many followers do you want to have? What's your, annual book sales goal? Like think about all of those goals, your target audience or your customer avatar, who they are, what are the problems they're facing, right? Really dig deep into those problems and then start thinking about how you can create content that showcases you as the guide, like you and what you offer your book is the guide to helping someone solve a problem. No one spends money unless it's solving a problem, right? Like if you have something that's going to solve a problem, they're going to be willing to put money on it and buy it. But they have to know that you can solve that problem. And that's part of that buying process. So curiosity kind of gets them. So, a lot of people are creating reels right now. They're using trending audio to get views and they're putting out fun content. And that's really a good way to get new eyes on your stuff. But reels aren't necessarily where you're selling. Like you're selling when they actually see the benefits to what you're doing. And then they click on your website and they purchase the book, right? So like you're not necessarily selling on social. You want to come up with that content strategy first and then develop the content around your strategy and the problem. So for an example, if you just, take a piece of paper and you write down, like, let's say you've already got the book out and you've got some people who have purchased it, read through the reviews and like, what's something specific that they're saying, the reason that they like it. I know an author that has a children's book and it has signs in it. So it's illustrated in American Sign Language. So one of the reasons people are purchasing that book is they're teaching their kids sign language while they're reading the book. That's a big problem, that communication piece. So for some of her content, she goes through and explains, tips on sign language, which it's not saying anything about the book, but it relates to the book and what she's actually offering. So another really good reference, and you'll see this, like if you've never heard this concept, you'll literally notice it in ads. So even like infomercials will always start with like, sometimes if they're really old, it's like a black and white video of someone maybe trying to cut a lemon and their knife is just too dull and they just look frustrated, right? And then it flips it and goes, now you can buy this knife set for $29.95 or 2 payments of whatever. Like, but they start on the problem and they show someone that's dealing with the problem. And then that draws us in because we're like, oh yeah, my knives are really dull too. And then when they're like, you can buy this now for da 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 da, like that's that sales process. And so, years ago, they didn't really focus on curiosity because most people weren't doing that in marketing. They saw someone with a problem, they saw that the product fixed it, and they bought it. But now we can buy products everywhere. We can go to Amazon, we can go shopping. We know what our problem is. We don't necessarily want to see someone struggling with the problem. We want to be wined and dined. Right? We want to feel like, oh, this is interesting. Like we want to see something that sparks our curiosity. Then we see that the problem can be solved, and then we purchase the product. I'm sure you guys have purchased stuff on Facebook or Instagram. You'll see the same ad over and over. I saw an ad probably at least 20 times. And then I was like, okay, fine. Like I have to try it. I've seen this too many times. I have to buy it. But the ads are obviously doing that very quickly. They're starting with curiosity. They show you how it's going to help you, and then their offer. It's very, very quick. But if you're, posting on social media and you're trying to grow your following, there's a big piece in a lot of that content just has to add value. If it's a new person is coming to your account, they need to understand how much value you bring to the table. And then when you do put that promotional piece out there, right? Or you say, oh, it's 4th of July, we're offering 25% off just to celebrate 4th of July. They're so much more likely to engage on that kind of a post if they've already seen all of these things where you're just giving and giving and giving, right? I've made a little workbook that you can print, and this isn't like a paid thing, it's free. You just pop your name and email in, and you can download this workbook. And I use this for my own stuff. I use this for my social media management clients. I don't care. You can unsubscribe from the email list if you want to it's just an easy way. If someone drops their name and email, it automatically sends it to you. So you can totally do that and unsubscribe. If you don't want to get emails, I don't send them very often. I wish I sent them once a week, but I'm not that consistent yet. So the workbook is there. The next thing, and this is someone I absolutely love. So this is Rachel Hollis, and I brought up a quote. So people ask, should I post on multiple social media platforms? So I put her quote here. She says, don't run out and get on every platform. Just choose one and do it really, really well, rather than trying to be active on every single space and doing a crappy job, which is really, really good advice, because there are so many different social media platforms that you can choose. She also says, I don't use Twitter. That's not really where I hang out. She says she's a really visual person, so she likes Instagram, and that's where she funnels a lot of her work. She's, got millions of followers, so I'm sure she's paying people to be active on other platforms. But when you're just starting out, it's a really good idea to choose one space. And when you're choosing that space, like where you're actually focusing, think about the audience that's there, right? Like I've kind of looked into promoting stuff on LinkedIn because a lot of business owners hang out there, and those are my clients. So I thought that might be another space to be active on. But I'm not consistent on Instagram myself, so I'm not going to add that until I'm consistent where I do hang out, right? So I hang out on Instagram. I love Pinterest. Those are two really great platforms. And my biggest advice for TikTok is it is very different. It's not as much like Instagram's very filtered, very pretty photographs, pretty videos, filters, music, all of this stuff. TikTok, though, is right. It's all video, but it's more of an authentic audience. They're not really looking for filtered content. Like you could just post a video on TikTok talking about a topic or showing things without having to show up like super professionally. It's a more raw and real type platform, but the audience that's there is a lot younger, and they're not necessarily consuming a lot of as much how-to content. There's some how-to content out there, but I think for me, I don't personally do much on TikTok. I might post a funny video, if I'm having fun with friends, but I don't do a lot on TikTok only because the audience there is pretty young. And if I'm not consistent on Instagram, where I'm actually finding work right now, it doesn't make sense to add another platform. So it's a good thing to keep in mind, just picking where you really want to focus your marketing efforts, because when you're doing it by yourself, you only have so much time in the day. And so you want the time that you spend on your marketing to be really productive and actually get you an ROI. And choosing one place, getting comfortable there, being consistent there, and then adding something else, being consistent there. I also think it's good to have accounts on all the platforms. You don't have to necessarily post there, but there are a lot of people that hang out on TikTok and hang out on Twitter, and maybe they think, oh, I should search for them. I wonder if they're on there. Maybe they find you, but maybe you have a link to your website and you have a little bio about you and they can find your website. Maybe you have a couple posts, right? You don't necessarily have to post the same thing across all platforms. When you do that, I have a friend that does that. And honestly, I just follow her on Instagram. I don't follow her on any of the other platforms because I already see it on Instagram. So that's another thing, like cross-posting it everywhere is also not really adding value to each of those audiences. Like Pinterest is very different. Instagram is very different. I think Instagram, you can put the same content on your Facebook page. I don't see anything wrong with that, but you don't have to cross-post it on all platforms because everyone consumes content differently on each one. So that's one little helpful tip too.
If you have a story that you just kind of put some hashtags on there, would that part of the content be wasted on Facebook? Because aren't hashtags just an Instagram thing?
Yeah, so hashtags don't really do much on Facebook. Sometimes I'll use them just for search results, right? So like if I'm posting something about, a web design project, I'm going to put hashtag web designer, but I don't expect that to do anything. As far as stories, I can't remember when it was. It was in the last few months they had released that hashtags didn't work in Instagram stories anymore. I don't know if they've updated that yet. I don't necessarily use a lot of hashtags in stories. They used to have where if you search the hashtag, you could see the stories that people posted within the hashtag, but I don't know if that's back up. So I wouldn't spend as much time using hashtags in stories because, again, it's a very small chance someone will find you in that way unless they just released it.
Linda's wondering if you're using Canva to create your Instagram posts typically.
I use some in Canva. Most Instagram posts perform better if they don't have as much text on the picture. So if you've got like a photo of a person or just a photo that relates to your content, like on my Instagram, the last 3 posts, I didn't take the photos. I just found these photos from Unsplash, which is a great resource. You can even tag the photographer that took the photo in the picture. So I try not to use as many posts that have text, which is really hard doing logos and stuff in websites. I kind of have to. But yeah, I do use Canva for some, like if I'm putting together a quote or showing a logo, then I'll use Canva for some of those posts. Canva really for Instagram stories, though. You can make really pretty Instagram stories with Canva.
Linda's saying she has a hard time understanding what stories are on Instagram and what she's supposed to be doing. So she's a really new person on Instagram. What would you recommend to help her kind of add some knowledge there, just practicing?
Yeah. So Instagram stories is really cool. A lot of people don't understand them. They don't get, what they're for. So Instagram stories are up for 24 hours. And a lot of people are like, why would I create content, just for an Instagram story, right? Like if it's only going to be there for 24 hours. The best thing to use Instagram stories for is to hop on there and like show your face and share a story, right? Like show about your day or maybe show your workspace. One way that I love to use Instagram stories is it creates conversation. So I'll share a really funny story that happened to me that day. And then when someone at the bottom of an Instagram story, there's a message option. So like my brother posted an Instagram story and at the bottom, it says send a message. So when I click send a message, we're actually having a one-on-one conversation together. So this is a really good way to increase some conversions. So like, let's say you hop on and you talk about your book, maybe you talk about the behind the scenes process, or maybe you just share a story about your life, right? And you're just like, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed today, but here's what I did. This really helped. I don't know if this will help anyone, but I wanted to share this here. A lot of people will respond. They'll say, thank you for sharing that. Like, I didn't know that you were feeling that too. And then you're having a one-on-one conversation with that person. You're actually developing a relationship with your followers. So Instagram stories are up there for a short amount of time. You can be a little bit more promotional if you want to be, because it's also just for 24 hours. So honestly, stories is probably worth like a whole nother hour training because it's pretty in-depth, but that's like just the gist.
So new to this thing. What do I use if I don't use stories? Like when I pull up Instagram and if I want to post something, where do I post something?
So you just click the plus button and it's going to give you the option for post, story, reel, or go live. So the post is what's going to show up in your Instagram feed. And then the story is the one that only shows up for 24 hours.
And can you hashtag when you're doing something live? For instance, Friday night, I'm going to do a book club. That might be a time for me to do a small reel and go live. So while I'm doing that, can I hashtag book clubs, or you can't hashtag?
So they wouldn't really perform well. The only place you're going to want to use hashtags is if it's a post that stays in your feed. So like if you had a book club, you could do a post prior and say, hey guys, we're going to do a book club. I'm going to go live and we're going to share the book we're reading. We're just going to hang out, pop on at 2 p.m. later today or 7 p.m. later today when we're doing our book club. And then in that post, you could use the hashtags and then just go live during that time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. So use hashtags in posts.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just made my entire time better. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Yeah. Honestly, though, like the more you can try and fail, the faster you learn. It's the people that are too afraid to try. What if I fail? I'm like, you're going to just get out there so you can fail faster and then learn it, right? Like
I tell people that's like a child. Children fall down when they're learning to walk.
Yeah.
But if you don't let them fall down, they never learn to walk. And
exactly.
Leslie says she has an illustrator with a very large following, and she talked about cross-promoting with them, but I think she means collaborating, so that posts also go on that individual's page. Would you recommend collaborations like that, and what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if she reaches out to her and just says, hey, would you be open to, posting, like if she's got a photo, like a really good photo of her book, and then maybe some photos of the inside, and she just sent her the pictures and said, hey, would you be open to sharing about the book and about illustrating it on your page and just tagging the Instagram? Not necessarily like, hey, go buy this book, but saying like, hey, I did the illustration on this. I love this book because of this, or this is why this book is so important. Have them, even if you wrote something up, you can say, hey, I'll write something up for the post if you wouldn't mind sharing it with your audience. That's a great avenue.
Could you talk about tagging and what that does?
Yeah. So if someone tags you in a post, it's going to show up in the tagged section, like if you're actually on your profile where you can see your picture and your post. I wish this was more clear. I need to do a screen share with my phone. But if you're on your profile, you'll see your post, and then you'll see the reels if you've posted any reels, and then you'll see the tag option, and it's going to show up in there if you approve it. You can set it up to where you can decline posts, or you have to approve them before they show up there. But that's another great thing. So if you post, let's say you've got a picture of maybe you're at Starbucks working on some stuff on your laptop, and you take a picture of the book and you've got your coffee mug, tag Starbucks in the coffee mug, that's going to show up on the Starbucks feed. That's a pretty big brand, but think about other brands and other companies that you really like and put that in the picture and tag them, like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just more exposure.
So back to like the hashtags, are they supposed to be on post now or in the comments? Because I know for a while Instagram algorithm was showing them more if they were in the comments than rather in the post. So I just had a question about that.
Yeah, so they go back and forth. Last I heard is that they should be in the caption, because your caption also is like if people are searching for something, when they search for it, if it's in your actual caption, it's going to populate. But if it's in the comments, the search doesn't pull from what's in the comments. I know a lot of people would put it in the comments if they wanted to hide them so it didn't look as spammy. But if you've got a caption and you put hashtags, I've just been putting them in the actual caption of the post. But don't get too caught up in these nitty gritty details. Sometimes you just have to throw it out there, like research the hashtags and test it on your own account too. Like, post consistently for a week and put them in the caption. Then the following week, post consistently for a week, put it in the comments and do some actual tests on your own account to see how it works, because you will hear gurus and people that, say that they know everything about social, which is impossible because it changes every week. They'll say, well, you have to do it this way and you have to do it this way. Like, this is your thing. You can do it however you want to. If you want to know like what is going to be the right thing or what's going to work well, just do some tests, like be willing to fail, like Linda said, and try it on both and see what works better on your account.
When you're making a story, I find them to be really, they're easy to make and they're pretty successful, but there's no way to like delete them before the 24 hours, like how you can do that on a Facebook post, right? There's no way to go in there and say, oh, okay, I want to delete this. You have to write out the 24 hours, right?
Oh, you can totally delete it. And I've done this before because I've accidentally posted on my story. So I've deleted it.
Okay.
So if you pull up your story, there's a button on the top right that says more, and it's got 3 little dots. And if you click it, you can hit delete, and then it removes it, which is super helpful.
How do you review your posts in Instagram to see who's looking at them or commenting on them?
Yeah. So you can swipe up if you've posted a story, and mine already says that I've reached my Instagram limit for the day, but we're going to ignore that. So if
Instagram limit for the day, what is that about?
So if you have an iPhone, you can set app limits. And so because I work on Instagram and I am on it personally, I just set it as an hour, because if I'm on there past an hour, like I have no bit, like stop it. Like that's too much.
That limit for yourself. I see.
Yes. So that's a really good, just to create some balance, like set 30 minutes or set an hour. And if you see it where it says, because it asks you, it says, hey, you've reached your limit. And it'll say, like, if I hit no thanks, it'll say, like, remind me in 15 minutes, ignore for the rest of the day. Or if I say it's fine, like, it'll just close the app and it won't let me get back on it. But to answer that question, like, I posted a story. And so, like, if I've got the story pulled up, I'm just going to swipe it up. It's pulling up the tag. So I'm swiping it up, and then it's showing all the people that viewed the story. Now, I don't really pay attention to this as much. Like sometimes I'll swipe up and look at who it was that was looking at the story. The big thing is I try to see like how many eyes. So like I posted this, I don't know, an hour ago, and it just says like 14 people saw it. Now I may check that tomorrow morning, right before the 24 hours is up. And if that number goes to 100 or 150, then I know, okay, like that was really interesting. A lot of people saw it. That was cool. I just pay attention to the number that way. But if you're posting stories and let's say you're doing video content, like judge how successful the Instagram story is by how many people actually message you and like either want more information or they're talking more about it, right? Like the one I posted is just a shout out of my brother. So a lot of people may not message me. Now, if I hop on and this is just going to give you an example of you can be silly and fun and you don't have to be professional all the time. I got on my Instagram story. This was my most, I think I had 25 people respond back and were talking about this story. So I get on, I went out to let the dog out, right? And so this lady was driving by and my dog had just went number 2. And she was driving by and she's like glaring at me. And I'm like, I have the bag. I'm not going to leave it. Like, I think she thought I was just going to leave it there. So I got on stories, like my hair's in a messy bun, I don't have any makeup on. And I'm just like, to the mean woman who glared at me, like, wait before you judge. Like, I was like so mad. So I just got on there to vent, right? And so I had so many people message me and they were like, this was so funny. I needed this laugh today. Thank you, right? And then like, after I shared that story, a lot of my posts had more interaction because all these people had messaged me and they started seeing my post. So just be fun, like get on there, be real, like be authentic and just share funny stories or even tips. Like I shared with a friend today about like a breathing technique when you have anxiety. And she was like, thank you for sharing this. And I may put that in my stories because it's really helped me. So just think about things you're learning just throughout your day that are helping you. It doesn't matter if it's a cooking tip, an anxiety tip, a funny story, like this is literally how you build relationships with followers. Like I've got friends that I've known online for years and years. I've never met them in person. And we just are friends because we're both real. And then we'll have phone calls now because we followed each other for so long. We actually want to connect on a friend basis.
Any harm in tagging an influencer? Is that a no-no or unethical?
If it's an influencer that you're wanting to connect with, I don't know if I would tag. Like really think about, and I think this is a personal thing. You've got to ask yourself, like, I'll tag big brands like Starbucks and Target and random stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like ask yourself, if someone was going to reach out to me and ask, if you could post this, how would you want to be approached? And if it's just a tag, they may not see it. They may just delete it. And I've done that tons of times. People will tag me and stuff just so their stuff shows up on mine. And it's kind of spammy. And I just remove the tag.
Now, Carrie's wondering, how can she access an overview, or do you have a recommendation where she can find something that'll help teach her just the very basics of how to navigate Instagram?
As far as the basics, I don't have a resource. I need to find one for the basics. But one person that I follow that I absolutely love is Hello Media, and you can find them on Instagram. I started following the girl who started the agency like years ago when they didn't have as many followers, and they're at like 37,000.
How do you repost? Because it was not easy to figure out how to do that. Could you talk a little bit about how to repost other people's content on your own feed?
Yeah, so if it's a picture, you can take a screenshot and then crop the photo so that it's just that. And it's not like, has all the other Instagram things on it. Just take a screenshot and then you would just post that screenshot just like you would any other post. I don't know how you do it on an Android, but I know on an iPhone, you just click the lock button and the top volume button. You just click that together and then it takes a screenshot. And then if it's like a post, you're obviously just going to crop the picture for the section that you would want to post. And then it's going to add it directly to your camera roll. And then you're going to post that photo and then you're going to tag the person. Now, if it's a video, you can do a screen recording and you can record the video on your screen and that will save to your camera roll. But you also want to crop the video when you're done with that as well. And then always tag someone, especially like if it's a video that you're screen recording and you want to repost that video, always tag the person that took the video. And also be careful about like reproducing certain content. Obviously, if it's a post that's on the internet, it's free for someone to use, and tag the person. Now, if they message you and say, please take that down, that's fine. Majority of people aren't going to say that. They're just going to be excited that you posted it as long as you're tagging them in the post.
There's also an app called Repost. And that was what I learned to do. And it actually just takes a whole post and it reposts it on yours. Have you ever used that?
I used it once a couple years ago, but it was just faster for me to just screenshot it and post it. Yeah.
I don't think if you just do the screenshot, it's going to notify anybody that you've reposted their content. But if you do the
if you tag them,
it will notify.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Is that something that you recommend, using highlights, and how would you use highlights? How does that benefit the person that's posting?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as your highlights go, I've seen, and I got this from another artist that I follow. She had like an about me highlight, which I have on my personal Instagram. And so I literally made that with Instagram stories or the Instagram stories in Canva. And so you can make slides, maybe have a highlight that has, your story, right? Or like about you, maybe about the book. Maybe you have one that says my team and you tag like the illustrator and other people that like helped you. Maybe you tag April. You can have different highlights for different things. It really just depends on your content, like you could put my book and you could post in your stories and actually hold the book and talk about the story and why you actually wrote it, why you really spent all this time releasing this book, why it's important to you, and then add that in a highlight that says my book or my story. And then anyone who watches those, when they message you, they're going to start a private message thread. So highlights are a great way to just kind of give some information, but also it's kind of just folders. Like really think about, a lot of people call them buttons, like your Instagram buttons on there, but those are just highlights and they're really just folders of past Instagram stories. This isn't really part of the social media part, but this is something I'm learning just in my own business, is focus, like if you're going to spend time in marketing, also spend time in sales, because sales are very different. Those are like two engines. Like imagine your business is an airplane and you have two engines, and one is sales and one is marketing. And marketing is more about building the brand and creating awareness and building relationships. And sales is like, let's say you're going to do a book signing, or maybe you're calling people, or maybe you're reaching out to other people who might share your post on their stuff, right? Or you're sending out mailers. Maybe you're sending out the book to people just like to be a blessing and say, hey, would you mind posting this? Like really think about those strategies, like marketing and sales, because it won't all happen through marketing. It can, which is how I started my business. Everything came through Instagram. And then I was like, I'm so like overwhelmed. I don't want to have to post on Instagram, be this active. But because I started the strategy and I started my business and got all my clients from Instagram, I had to keep that going. Then I had to start thinking about other avenues of sales and networking events and like getting out and about. Don't just sit behind your computer, behind your phone and think, oh, I'm just going to sell the book on my phone. Like you have got to get some business cards, get out there, meet people, go to events. Like that's also just as important, if not more, than working on the social media side. I hope that's a little helpful.
How can they reach out to you if they're interested in further help? I know you do one-on-one consults to help people with social media and to help train them how to use it. Anything you'd like to share, and where people can go to find out more information about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to share my screen again. So I did put, my Instagram's at Create and Collab. Pinterest, if you need some color palette inspiration, I do a lot of color palettes and tips on Pinterest. But one thing that I wanted to share is I've got a private Facebook group that you can join. My business coach and I actually did a training. It's about 28 minutes long, and it's 5 ways to generate new business leads. And I talk a little bit about social media. I gave some post ideas in there, as well as just other ways to grow your business, like offline, not just through social media. So that would be a really good piece. I put a little QR code so you can pull up the group that way. But the best way is just the website. So createandcollab.com is a great place to go for more ideas and inspiration, especially like the blog. So I generally I try to post once a week on the blog. There's a lot of marketing tips. There's some stuff on self-care. I like to just add as much value as I possibly can. Yes, I'm a web designer and a logo designer, and I do social media, but I want the blog to be a space, and the Facebook group to be a space where you guys can learn stuff and not necessarily have to spend any money. So those would be a great place to find out more about what I do.
Yeah, I love the heart of service, so that regardless of what somebody can afford, they can get help, which is an awesome thing. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.